Welcome, everyone. It is a pleasure to have you here today. I am Fran, half of the partnership of the Hopenning, a place where hope happens when you open up your heart and your mind to it. So Marina and I, my wonderful co-partner, have created a space that is positive, uplifting, and more than anything else will bring you hope. And Marina is a full-time rapid transformational therapist, clinical hypnotherapist. She also has a background in music, which she spends her time doing when she is not doing hypnotherapy. Marina could basically sing before she could talk. She owns a Christmas caroling business and sings with a big band in her hometown of Calgary, Alberta. She also lives part-time in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. I am a 34-year veteran elementary school teacher, and I am a part-time rapid transformational therapy, hypnotherapy practitioner. So welcome, and this is opening number 43. And we have a very special part 2 of our series today, and Marina will welcome our guest.
Thank you so much, Fran. I am very happy to introduce part 2 of our series with Julie Valenti. Julie graduated with a certificate in addiction studies from JFK University in psychology in Orinda, California, and studied psychological trauma at the Ross Institute in Richardson, Texas. Julie has developed a 20-concept approach to treating those struggling with PTSD due to childhood trauma. She has written and facilitated educational classes, workshops, and support groups offering guidance to individuals, couples, and families. The positive results her clients have experienced from the program, as well as her own personal recovery from childhood trauma, has led her to write a book titled Knowing How, 20 Concepts to Rewire the Brain, which is available on Amazon. Julie is a certified hypnotherapist and an ordained minister. She also is a sought-after innovative speaker in person, Zoom, and FaceTime sessions, as well as webinars, allow Julie to help clients across the US and internationally. And tonight we are talking about the second half of the 20 concepts, the last 10 concepts to rewire your brain. And we are now at the turning point. So welcome again, Julian. I really am so excited to have you here. So first off, why don't we recap a little bit from our episode last week?
Okay, hi, thanks again for having me. I'm excited to be here and always excited to spread this news and to get more and more people interested in taking ownership of this amazing body and brain, and being able to use it as a vehicle to get where they want to go in life. You know, I look at the body and brain as a vehicle, and if you don't know how to drive it, you don't know how to take care of it, you don't know how to maintain it, it isn't very likely that it will take you where you really want to go. It might take you over a cliff or into a telephone pole, but it doesn't take you out into the world to live that kind of great, big, beautiful life that I think we all have really, really wanted and longed for. And so I think people getting to understand this human organism and the computer system it contains, and to really look at it that way, the memory is the data, and that's what you're going to be working with. So we have to understand memory. We have to understand emotions. We have to understand how this is all working and how it gets activated by certain events and people and places in our life. Right away, it's activating this brain and it's shooting right to memory. Is this something safe? Is this something you recognize? If it isn't something you recognize, it immediately poses as a threat. And I talked in the first episode about how we as people get triggered by things that remind us of things that harmed us in our childhood or in our past, generally speaking. So when we get that trigger, it's very much like the trigger of the war veteran. We go back in time and we begin to lose reality about the here and now, and we're back in time and we're re-experiencing the associated feelings along with the memory, and because it's back in time, we're likely to grab a hold of strategies that were developed as children or even young adults. And so then when we begin to try to deal today with these real complex issues that life is always throwing at us, then we're using old regressive tools and things just don't get a whole lot better. So I developed the 20 concepts as a way to understand how this computes, how this actually works, so that we can have some power in our life to actually stay in the here and now and use really effective, intelligent strategies for dealing with trials and tribulations, as opposed to getting triggered back into a time and place where strategies were created. And a lot of times those strategies worked in our childhood. But I have a saying, what worked for us then may now begin to work against us as adults. So we have to be very, very careful and take that personal responsibility for how I live and who I am and what I create in my life. So anyways, that's not a real recap of the first 10, but it's an intro to the recap. So here's the recap. The first 10 concepts are all about how our brain developed in our childhood. All the people that we were with and the messages we got and what a relationship looks like and how important I am in the family and what my role is. And we're downloading that information into our memory bank, because we need it, because we're going to use it. So the first 5 concepts are all about that process and what we're downloading. And then we take those first 5 concepts, what we have downloaded, and we go out into the world and we use it to navigate and negotiate our lives. The problem is that a lot of times that information is coming from a system, an environment that isn't all that healthy. There's a lot of conflict, a lot of wounded people having children. My parents were tremendously wounded in their childhood. They didn't have, they did the best they could, right? You'll hear people saying that, but the best that they could with what they got to work with left a lot of empty pieces here. Right? So that's what I'm going to go out into the world and deal with. And I'm going to take that wiring and I'm going to get it hardwired through recreating and reenacting the same kind of attachment figures, the same kind of my identity that got developed in that childhood. I'm going to go out and make sure that that's secure by doing the same kinds of behaviors, recreating the same kind of dynamics. And I don't want that in my life. I don't want to be living that way. And finally, it brings me nothing more than the same sort of lost feeling and confusion that I had in my childhood and now in my young adulthood. And if I don't do something different, it'll just go on and on and on until my life is over. And I don't want to be old and looking back and having regrets and over what I didn't do. And so the next 10 concepts that we're going to talk about tonight are the concepts that they're basically the new wiring. They're basically the new effective, intelligent strategies that you need to put into memory. And we got to use this again and again and again. We wired through time and repetition, and we will rewire through time and repetition. But we have to know what to replace. Well, a lot of us don't have any difficulty understanding what needs to be replaced. But what do we replace it with? So I've created the next 10 concepts with, this is what you replace it with. Use this again and again and again. Read it, write it, speak it, get it into memory, learn it, make it yours, own it, and begin to use these next 10 tools, strategies to navigate, negotiate your life. And I can pretty much promise you that it's going to be a life-changing experience. And it's going to be one that calms down that emotional difficulty, calms everything down, so that the intelligent and creative part of the brain can begin to create new opportunities, new adventures, new challenges. So, all right, so that was sort of a recap. The first 10 concepts are: first 5, childhood; next 5, getting that hardwired. And then we get to concept number 11. And that is where I say we hit the wall. We talked a little bit about it last time, but we hit that wall because we begin to realize that what we think is our problems aren't really our problems. They're really solutions to these deeper problems. So they're distractions. They are where we ended up. Now, a lot of these problems, such as addictions, they need to be addressed, of course. I'm not saying like, oh, if you just do this, you don't have to worry about your addictions. No, you can get yourself into a real spiral where the whole organism does become addicted, and you're going to have to get some real special care for that. But do not forget that at first, that addiction gave you relief. At first, it sort of kind of worked for you. It was a solution to the deeper problem, the problem of I don't know who I am. Not really. Because remember, in the first session, we talked about how the authentic self gets lost in a lot of that confusion being con with another, fused. So we are confused with our past, with our upbringing, with our parents, with who we became, and lost who we were authentically and who we were always meant to be. So that's the real problem. And we have to, that's why the name of the program, my program, is Wisdom, Deep and Profound Knowledge and Understanding, and Recovery. And recovery is the recovery of the authentic self. So the problem's not the problem, it's a solution. So now we have to say, okay, so the solution to what? We just talked about it, loss of the authentic self. And when we get to that point, now we can roll up our sleeves and get to work, because now we're going to work on the real problem. We're going to take care of the addiction. But if you get to working on that real problem, a lot of times you would no more do the kinds of behaviors that you've been using and doing, then you'd hit yourself over the head with a 2x4, because you have recovered the authentic self. And that authentic self is full of love and joy and peace and excitement and adventure and creativity. It just sets you free. So concept number 10 is, or concept number 11 is, in fact, that realization, that awakening, that in the 12-step community, that spiritual awakening, they call it. You have that moment of clarity. I remember when I had it, I don't know what marriage I was on, and I was telling my then husband, you have a problem. And he turned around and said, no, you know what? You have a problem. And I went, you know what? I absolutely do. This is my problem. So that led me to all kinds of different, I went to a 12-step group. I went to adult child of addicts and alcoholics. I went to Al-Anon. I went to CODA. I went to all of this because now I'm on a mission. Why am I creating these problems? Because it is my problem. And that's a beginning. That's the beginning of turning it all around. So after we realize that the problem's not the problem, we go back and we realize that, remember in the one of the concepts that was so confusing was where we go to hide our, not where we go to hide our feelings, but yeah, hiding feelings, because we were taught not to have feelings. Well, guess what? Guess the very next thing that we need to roll up our sleeves and get busy is feeling these feelings. Understanding that a feeling is there to let us know that something is going on in the environment that we can better be paying attention to. Well, we're going to have to feel our body in order to take the appropriate action. I think I talked a little bit about this last time, but it's so important to know that what is actually happening when you are having a feeling is something external to you in the environment is being received by one of the senses. I'm hearing it, I'm seeing it, I'm smelling it, I'm feeling it. Something is actually going on in the environment, coming in through my senses, activating the neurological system, which then activates the endocrine system, which then supplies the circulatory system with the appropriate hormone. This rushes through, the heart starts pounding hard to get that rush through the system. Then it goes to the muscular and skeletal so that you can take an action. That's how the human organism works. It's not a theory, it's not an interesting idea. It's how the human organism works. And when all that happens, when that neurological system gets activated and the receptors open up and the hormones go and the heart starts beating and starts moving through the body, yeah, guess what? You feel it. That's why they call it a feeling. But that's what's happening. So when people talk about their feelings, you better realize what you're talking about. You're talking about emotion. You're talking about energy and motion, and you will feel that. If you allow yourself to, if you wake up to that truth and ask yourself in the morning, I do an exercise every morning where I ask myself, how am I feeling emotionally and why? Right? It's a little journaling exercise I do in the morning. How am I feeling in my body emotionally and why? Because when we feel sad, it means that there is some kind of a loss, something is missing. And the body is asking us to give that our attention and maybe honor that which is gone. When we are feeling fear, it's just a word, but it activates a whole different cluster of hormones than the sadness does. When we are feeling fear in our body, then that is because there is something that could going on in the environment that could harm you. It could hurt you. And so the activation is adrenaline, oh, wake up, pay attention. Either stop dead in your tracks or move cautiously forward, but be aware and behave accordingly. When you are feeling anger, that's again, a lot of adrenaline, but it's also got some cortisol and some testosterone in there. That is then informing the organism that there's been a violation. There's been an injustice. There's been a betrayal. And it's asking you to take some sort of action, which in this case, you would want to set a boundary. You would want to speak out loud. Don't do that. I don't like that. Stop that. That's not fair, right? So it's asking us to do something to take care of this organism. That is, and even when we're feeling happy, joy, something's going on in the environment, activating the organism, we're feeling it, and it's basically informing the organism that something's going on that is life enhancing, that is life supporting, that is life thriving. And again, there's adrenaline and dopamine, but there's also endorphins and serotonin and oxytocin. Oxytocin is a bonding hormone. So what is it asking the organism to do? It's asking you to celebrate and to dance and to congregate. And by the way, the human organism functions at optimum when it is in that state, when it has. So you're kind of seeing where I'm going with this. When I talk about living that great, big, beautiful life, you're going to have a healthier body by doing it. So you got to feel your feelings, but you also have to understand them. Now, here's something that's also important to remember. Because we have this very, very active and involved cerebral cortex, the thinking part of the brain, the imagining part of the brain, we can also set off that entire fear, anger, pain. We can, even the joy, we can do that by just thinking about a situation, thinking someone did an injustice. We're going to activate those anger hormones, thinking that something scary is going to happen, something could happen that harm, activate that. Thinking about maybe I'm going to lose something or something might not be there, activate those same. So it's not just real time stimulation from the environment. We can think our way into all kinds of feelings. So we need to be careful about the stories that we're telling ourselves, the thoughts that we're thinking, because we are activating this organism. Okay, so that is feel your feelings, and the byline is understand them, process them, know that they're meant a big energy surge, which is meant to be discharged out of the body. How do you discharge it out of the body? Through the breath. Right? Well, certainly the fear and the anger through the fight or flight, well, that takes a lot of breath. That simulates big movements, which cause a lot of breath. So talking, you ever notice how after you talk things through, you're just like, I felt a lot better after I had a good talk with somebody about it, right? Through the breath. And so even the people who love to meditate seem to have a healthier body. And what do we focus on when we meditate? Breathing in and out, right? And even when, so that breath is so important. Okay, so feel your feelings, process your feelings, understand your feelings. That is the very first concept that you're going to be using for rewiring.
So, Julie,
yes.
When you were talking about the breath, you know, we talk a lot about how if you just get active, if you just, you know, go and go for a run or go for a walk or work out. But what you're saying is just even breathing changes the physiological processes in your body, which really makes sense, because when we do go for a walk, when we run, when we work out, we are changing our breath. We're becoming, you know, like we're breathing heavier, or we're breathing deeper, or we're, you know, getting more oxygen in or more carbon dioxide exchange. So
Sure.
that really does make sense.
Yes, absolutely. We'll talk more about that when we talk about anchors to triggers, but also that, and then when you think about taking that walk or taking that run or working out, you're also activating endorphins. So you're activating all kinds of big hormonal responses to that kind of activity. And that happens when we're dancing also, or when we're, you know, doing, I mean, you know, all of it is, and that's kind of the goal, is keeping this system up and running, where we have a lot of the time, we want to have that high level of endorphins and serotonin and oxytocin, because life will throw us a curveball, and we're going to need to have all that fight or flight hormones ready to be utilized in these surging moments when it requires action. But a lot of us sit around and think about all this stuff and thinking about the sad things and the awful things and so on and so forth, you know, I'm probably one of the few therapists will say, yeah, don't sit with your feelings. Understand them, use them, and get on with it, right? So yeah, I'm going to talk, and there's so much to this particular concept that I could go on for quite a while, but I'll move on. And then again, we're going to circle back around to this feeling again and again through this entire last 10 concepts. So right away, the very next concept is it a feeling or is it a thought? And it's so important to separate that out. And we don't talk that way. Nobody talks that way. I'm not quite certain why we have become a population in a society that calls everything a feeling. I feel it's time to go. That's a thought. I feel that was unfair. That's another thought. So why are we always calling everything a feeling when it really isn't a feeling? Right? That's not a neurological hormonal activation. That's a thought. Now, our thinking will activate the neurological system, but let's try to communicate and at least get clear for ourselves. There is a difference between feeling and thinking. In other words, we'd say that there's only 4 feelings: anger, sadness or pain, fear, or joy. And everything else is either a combination of those 4 or it's a thought. And so if you're saying I feel and you're not backing it up with one of those 4, it's a thought, I can guarantee you. And so a lot of times when we were children, our thoughts, our opinions, and what we had to say didn't really matter. So we sort of have learned that to mute ourselves when it comes to what we really think about a situation or about ourselves or about our lives or about a way, you know, we're being treated. We stuff it. And then somewhere along the way, we learned that you can't argue with somebody's feelings. So we can talk and we can put everything, frame everything as a feeling. And there's a real weird kind of subtle manipulation too when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're saying this is how I'm feeling, right? Because it's sort of, especially when we say you make me feel a certain way, and it just is very, very confusing language. It disempowers you. It gives the other person power that they supposedly that they have to over you to make you feel a certain way. And so if you make me feel a certain way, then all of a sudden that person is holding responsibility for your feelings. Wait, that person is holding responsibility for your entire hormonal activation and that whole system? Well, that's just not true. So it's, again, confusing. It gets fused up with another person and it's completely inappropriate and it just isn't true. So we get really clear and we talk about our thoughts and we're you know, we kind of stand up and say, yeah, this is my opinion. These are my legitimate thoughts about what's going on in this situation. And I have a feeling. And my body is responding to this situation, not to you, but to the situation, because that's how my body performs perfectly. So, so I created a communication formula that helps us to stay clear about the difference between thinking and feeling. And I challenge everybody to begin to use intelligent language and talk about your thoughts and talk about your feelings and make sure that they're separate. And just kind of notice with a little smile how many people go on and on and on about what they're feeling while you know they're really talking about what they think. So little experiment, try it. But so here's this, it's called a 5-part communication formula. And it's not just a communication that you're going to have with other people. It's a communication first and foremost that you're going to have with yourself. So let's try, I use it as a journaling exercise and recommend other people do the same. So the first part of this formula is, what's going on? What's happening? You might say, what's the evidence? But basically, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What's actually happening? That's number one. So you can write that out for yourself. What's going on in my life right now? That's got my attention. Then you go to number 2. What is my thoughts about what's going on that's got my attention? What do I think about it? What is my opinion? What is the story that I'm telling myself about what's going on here? Number 3, how does my body feel regarding this situation and what is going on here? And is my body responding to what's actually happening, the data? Or is it responding to the story I'm telling myself about this? So you want to get really clear. And it will be evidenced by, am I in danger? Is something going to hurt me? Is something violating my sense of being, my wellness? Is there a loss happening here? That's how I really check it out, whether it's my story or whether something's really happening. My body never lied to me, right? And number 4, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want in this situation? What do I want to do about what's going on? About the real circumstance here? What do I want? And then number 5, what am I willing to do to get what I want or close to it? What am I willing to do? That's sort of the first part. That's the conversation you have with yourself. Now, imagine using it with another person, someone that you think did something that certainly has your attention, certainly got something activated in you, no question about that. So then you can go to that person, you can write it out ahead of time if it's helpful, and a lot of times it is helpful. But then you can go and you can say, hey, check it out. This is what I see happening. Hey, check it out. This is what I heard you say. And these are my thoughts about it. I can think it's unfair. I can think it's damaging. I can think it's mean-spirited. I can think it's irresponsible. I got all kinds of thoughts about it. But let me tell you what, this is what my body is telling me. That's number 3. This is what my body is telling me about what I'm seeing and hearing happen. And therefore, I know what I want. This is what I want. I'm going to tell you. And now I'm going to ask you, what are you willing to do about the information that I just shared with you? What are you willing to do about what I want? Are you willing to consider it? Are you willing to have a conversation with me about it? Are you willing to make some changes because you see the value in what I've just communicated with you? What are you willing to do? Because you're important to me. So we can use it for ourselves, for a journaling exercise. We can write it out first because we want to have this difficult conversation. And guess what? When you have this conversation with someone, maybe there's a conflict or a misunderstanding. When you have this conversation, guess what? There's no blame. You're not trying to convince that person that there's something bad and wrong about them. Because guess what that's going to do? It's going to give them a good hard push away. Remember when I talked about the concept locus of control, which basically embeds that belief that there's something bad and wrong about me? Now go get in a relationship with somebody and have them standing there saying, my job is to convince you that there's something bad and wrong about you. Oh, like, how well is that going to turn out? Especially if that's an intimate relationship and you're trying to create something better, a better connection. That's not going to do anything. Not to mention it's all over in that victim, rescuer, perpetrator triangle. I'm a victim and you're a perpetrator, and now you got to rescue me, the victim of your perpetration. And I mean, how well is that going to work? Again, it's just convincing somebody that they're bad and wrong. What do you want to do that? You don't want anybody to do that. So when you have this form of communication, it's just so clean. You said what happened. You said your thoughts. You said how your body felt. You said what you want. And you asked them to participate or not participate, but to let you know so that you know what you're dealing with here. It's very, very clean. It's very, very effective. So is it a thought or is it a feeling? Get those separated, use them in the way that they're intended to be used. And especially if you're trying to communicate with somebody else or even yourself. It brings a lot of clarity when you start using this journaling exercise to what really is going on. Another feeling concept. Number 14. The thinking, feeling, behavior loop. I already mentioned it earlier, but I'm gonna elaborate. Remember I said you can get activated, the organism can be activated by real life, real time situations that are happening, or this organism, this entire neurological, hormonal, circulatory, musculoskeletal organism can get activated by the thoughts that you think. So we got a thinking, feeling, behavior loop. The thoughts activate the feelings prepare the body for action. That's the behavior, thinking, feeling, behaving. Okay, so I just talked a little bit about how that is a negative spin. Because if you tell yourself, think the story that people are out to hurt you, that the world is mostly a evil and frightening place to be in, you're going to activate a lot of fear hormones, and your behavior is going to be isolation, holding back, distrust, right? Well, how much fun is that? Not much. That'll drive you to drink, right? So here's the good news. Works the other way too. You can tell yourself the story that the world is mostly a loving place to be. Look at nature and trees and animals and rivers and waterfalls and the ocean and the generosity and the groups and bands of people that are working and dedicating their life to the healing of our planet and of mankind. And okay, so you could say, really, the truth is that the world is really mostly a loving, kind place to be in. I'm lucky to be here. Guess what kind of hormones you're going to activate with those thoughts? Yeah, you're going to activate some serotonin, that gives you peace. You're going to activate some endorphins, that makes you want to celebrate. You're going to activate some oxytocin, that makes you want to congregate. What is your behavior going to look like now? Well, you're going to get out there, create a great, big, beautiful life. You're going to be generous. You're going to be kind. You're going to be playful. You're going to be celebrating this great, big, beautiful world that we live in. So it's an extremely, extremely powerful concept. You can use it for good, or you can use it for not so good. That's up to you. So be very, 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 very careful about the thoughts that you think, and make sure that there's some evidence backing them up. Takes you right back to that formula, right? Okay, so there's the thinking, feeling, behavior. Number 15. This one is what we were sort of touching on a little while ago, which is number 15 is called anchors to triggers, meaning that you better know what triggers you. Because if you want to live this great, big, beautiful, exciting, passionate, adventurous life, there's going to be triggers. In other words, there's going to be things in this life that remind you of real pain, real suffering, real betrayal, real confusion. And so when that happens, this is the PTSD part. When that trigger happens, and it will happen, when that trigger happens, you better know how to feel it. You will feel it, right? You're going to feel it right away in your body. It's going to go to hot. Your eyes are going to well up with tears. You're going to hold your breath. You're going to tremble in your guts. You know, your body is going to get activated by the trigger. You're going to feel it. And the minute you feel that, you want to throw down an anchor so you don't go to childhood and start using childlike strategies to deal with it. Yell, scream, cry, pout, take your ball, run away, go find somebody else to play with. No, don't, please. Don't let the trigger take you back. Anchor it. So how do we anchor it? Very first thing, feel your feelings, feel it in your body, and take that deep breath and drop your shoulders. Take that deep breath and drop your shoulders. Now, a lot of us do it intuitively. Right away, something happens, we go, right? So our body knows what to do, but then we get jacked up again and go like, okay, now I'm going to get all jacked up again. So we purposefully, consciously take that deep breath and drop our shoulders. We think the brain communicates to the body, but the body communicates to the brain too. And when we are triggered, our understanding brain and body, when we get triggered, our thinking brain goes offline and it all goes down into the survival part of the brain. Well, you can't live it. First of all, we're not living in that world. Our survival is not at risk, on an hourly basis. So we got to evolve our brain to function in the world that we're living in now. So we need to create that rapid firing neural pathway. So when we hit that, when that trigger happens, we feel it in our body and we take a nice deep breath. We drop our shoulders. The body communicates to the brain. There's no crisis here. The intelligent part of the brain knows that we do not deep breathe and relax when there's a real crisis happening. So it begins to open up that cerebral cortex and that thinking part of the brain where your intelligence is, where your communication is. So right away, where reality of now exists. See, that limbic part of the brain, the emotional and the memory part of the brain, the autonomic system, it doesn't know the difference between, it doesn't know time, it doesn't know past from present. It's just working, doing its thing, keeping you alive, right? Memory. Only in the cerebral cortex and the intelligent part of the brain do we understand time. Why? Because it was created by somebody. And yes, the snow falls, the seasons change, that happens, but we made the word season. We made the word fall, spring, summer, winter. We took letters and we made up words. That's the intelligent part of the brain. It's a formula, but it knows the difference between now and then. And so we wake up the cerebral cortex. Now we're in real time. We're not triggered to the regressive place. We're right here and right now. We take a nice deep breath. And if we're in communication with someone and that person is activating the trigger, then we say, hold on, because speech is there. Hold on, I'm triggered and I need to not talk right now. What a concept. I need to go take a time out because I'm afraid if I talk right now, it could do more harm than help. So I
You know what we've been told is if someone asks a question, like in school, right? If we have to answer a question that it's a triggering question, that we excuse ourselves, that I just have to use the washroom right now.
There you go.
And then come back and, by then it's, or I just have to grab a drink of water, I'll be right back.
Right,
It's
right.
basically what you're saying too.
Or I'll get back to you. I promise you, I will return to this, but I can't. And it's literally, I can't think straight right now. That's the god awful truth, right? Remember, we've all been there where something happens and we blurt something out or we do something, and then only later, when the intelligent part of the brain is back online, we're just like, oh, shoot. I should have said that. Oh yeah, now it does you a lot of good. I say if it happens, and you can't get out of it and you actually do something, then go back and ask for a redo and say, you know what, I was really triggered. And here's what I really wanted to say. And then say it. So there's nothing wrong with going back and asking for a redo. It's humbling, and it's basically asking for forgiveness, which is a beautiful thing. But a lot of us are so, we got to keep up that pretense of know-it-all and we got it all together. And no, it's a beautiful thing to be vulnerable and say, I made a mistake. I'm so human. Oh well. So we want to be able to anchor to triggers. And that timeout that you were talking about, Fran, where you just say timeout, I can't possibly respond to this right now. Then we do take that space. And as soon as we get that space, more deep breathing, dropping shoulders, thinking, wow, what just happened that triggered me? How do I want to deal? What in the heck is causing me to get so on fire about what just happened? Because if you are that hot, I can guarantee you that it isn't just the current situation. It's a backlog of what that current situation is reminding you of. And so if you respond to it, somebody's going to get a response, a reaction instead of a response, meaning instead of responding intelligently, no, that's offline. And now you're going to get a reaction. Reaction is to act like you did before. Yeah, back then when you were a kid, when you didn't have a lot of intelligence running. So you just don't want to do it. Don't do it to yourself. And know the difference between a feeling and a trigger. A trigger is when you have a reaction or a physiological response that is out of proportion to what's actually happening. That's a trigger. Know what triggers you so that you can do some preventative. Like, I'm going into a very triggering situation. There's likely to be people there or things going on there, or that particular person, or I'm going to visit my family and they always, my sister, or, whatever. So I know I'm going to be triggered and I'm prepared. I'm going in anchored. I'm going in deep breathing. I'm going in, stay out of the triangle. That's not my perpetrator. Go in, locus of control. I can't control that person, but I sure as hell can control my thinking and my feeling and my behavior, right? Go in, loaded up, anchored up with concepts. So that's a very, very important concept number 15. Concept number 16. These last few go pretty fast. Concept number 16 is modulation. That basically is what I did when I anchored. That started the modulation process. That means that I began to dial down stress hormones and open up something else. So some kind of peace, some kind of like, I know myself, I know I got this, I'm anchored. So a modulation is about turning things up or down. And my hands are on the dials and I know exactly what I'm doing. I know how not to scorch the sauce. I know when to get that nice little bubble going and boil and then turn it down just the right amount. And over time, you know yourself that way so that your hands are always on the dials. Basically, you're opening and closing hormonal receptors at will. This is where you gain mastery over the organism. It becomes yours. You own it. And you have a loving relationship with it. Because with you and hands on the dials, you can really create the kind of existence you want to have. So modulation is what I call one of the big players. And you go into situations that could be triggering, well modulated already. So the next concept is desensitization. Desensitization is basically an end result of doing all of these concepts thus far. You become less sensitive to people, places, and things that were in the past really triggering. Yeah, you're just not that sensitive anymore. Now, I write in the book, desensitization is never a concept that is asking you to tolerate any kind of abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. It's never meant to do that. That is a misuse of this concept. This concept is challenging yourself to let people be who and how they are, and just make a decision for yourself. Do you want to be in close proximity or not? But you're not going to change them, locus of control, right? So desensitization is just letting people be who and how they are, and making a decision of being who and how you are. Either that's something I want to be around, or something that I don't, but I don't have to judge it. I don't have to get all activated by it. I can make an intelligent choice. See how much you got that intelligence up and running at all times. So desensitization, you use these concepts, you practice these concepts in your life, and it's an automatic end result. You're less sensitive. You look at things and you got a little smile, and you only remember a time when something like that used to drive you over the edge. Now you just kind of go like, yeah, I know. There's that, right? I know what to do with that. So the next concept, and I call this, I say if understanding brain and body is the platform that this work is built on, then integration is the framework that it hangs on. That integration is where you want to live. And it is the ability to stay out of black and white thinking. Stay out of either or. Stay out of us and them, right and wrong. Stay out of those extremes, those opposites, and go into what I call the middle way. Now, this is sort of my Buddhist philosophy coming alive in my program. And that is, somebody once said, "Oh, I really like your program, but there isn't any kind of spirituality in it." I'm like, what about integration? That's so holy. That's so divine. That walking in the middle, that's where grace lives, right? How can you be more spiritual than that? Us and them thinking.
Or even, Julie, how can you be more spiritual than to allow someone to be who they are without judgment?
Yeah, stay out of that critical judging and just be a gentle observer.
To me, this is all spiritual. It's all about that spiritual growth, all about the healing of the self.
Absolutely. And so integration is also about integrating intelligence with emotion. Also about integrating past and present in my way, how I decide that I integrate that into my life, right? Because you're never going to get rid of it. You're never going to get over it. You're never going to get beyond it, because you have a human organism and you have memory. So you better embrace it, and you better know what you're going to do with it. People, I just want to get over it. I just want to leave that. That's in the past. No, you have memory. It's in the present. The past is integrated into the present, but you get to make an intelligent decision on how that's integrated. Integrated it will be, right? So, so bringing those things together, and when you finally do this deep healing work of what happened that shouldn't have happened in my childhood, and what didn't happen that should have happened in my childhood. When I'm ready to do that deep, deep work, the place that we come out of is the integration that, yes, my parents did things that were harmful, and they did things that helped me. They gave me both. And just because they did things that are harmful did not obliterate all the wonderful things and helpful things they did, nor did all the helpful things they did obliterate the fact that they did some real harm. I need to integrate that and find peace, right? I need to find peace in that. That's what integration is. It's finally finding peace. So concept number 19, and that is the concept of tolerating the discomfort of doing things differently. Because if you cannot do number 19, you will never be able to do this work. You will never be able to make that big life-changing, and it is life-changing. You won't be able to do it. Tolerate the discomfort is, your brain is not going to want you to do this. Your brain does not want that new strategies. It doesn't want the new memory. It wants the old memory. Why? Because the old memory has kept you alive. And the truth is if you're alive, just keep doing the same thing again and again and again. You might not be happy, but the brain doesn't really care if you're happy. That's not its job. Its job is to keep you alive. And that has been working thus far. So don't be changing stuff up. You try to change stuff up, yeah, you're going to feel uncomfortable. That's going to be uncomfortable. A lot of people go like, this just isn't who I am. This just isn't how I am. It's like, okay, well, if you don't want to change, then you're in the wrong program. Go do something else. But if you want to do this, yeah, you're going to have to change, and it won't be comfortable. You have to literally create new wiring. That's not comfortable. Your brain doesn't want you to do it. Your whole body is going to sabotage this like no other. Expect it. That's all I'm saying is expect it. That's why that concept is there. Expect to be uncomfortable. Expect to be really challenged and break through, because guess what? The brain doesn't take very long before it begins to realize that, wow, when I live this way, less stress hormones, less adrenaline, less taxing on my heart, less digestive upset, less higher, better functioning immune system. And the brain is going to be like, oh, wait a minute. No, yeah, this new stuff is that's it, because it enhances the entire organism. So you'll tolerate the discomfort of doing things differently for a while, but it doesn't take very long. Again, with the intelligence of this organism to quickly realize that if the organism functions at optimum using this new data, this new entry, these new concepts, it's going to go to that. And change begins to happen really fast once you cross that threshold. And finally, through all of that, through the integration of all these concepts into one whole lifestyle, way of being, you finally hit number 20, which is adult responsibility. So I no longer react like I did then. Today, I respond. I have the ability to respond to all of my trials and tribulations, all of my challenges. I have the ability to respond as an adult, mature, intelligent, in the here and now, with dignity, kindness, and honesty and grace. That's what I'm going for. That's number 20. That's the real ability to respond to what's going on in your life. So, so they all work together to get you to that end result. And then just start living that way. Just keep, whenever you find a challenge, open up to your table of contents in your book. I always have my book with me. So open up to the table of contents and look at these and say, why does my body feel this way? And then you're like, oh, locus of control. Wait a minute, I'm trying to control something that is out of my control. This is the only thing I can control, right? Or, oh, look at that. I'm definitely positioning myself as a victim. There are no perpetrators, I mean, unless they have a, gun to your head or a knife to your throat, then there's a real perpetrator there and you really are a victim. But come on, you guys, how often does that happen? I mean, it does happen. So I'm not going to say never as an adult are you ever a victim, but we position ourselves as victims in all kinds of situations. That person did something to me. No, that person didn't do anything to you. That person just did what they do, and you happen to be connected to them somehow. They didn't do it to you. They just did it. If it wasn't you, they'd do it anyways to somebody else or with someone else. They're just doing what they do. It's up to you to decide, do I want to be in close proximity to that? Do I want to participate that? Or do I not? See, always integrating, creating that rapid firing neural pathway between intelligence and emotion are, it's a marriage made in heaven, seriously. But we have to do it. Our brains don't actually function that way. Our brains function independently. That's the brain we're working with. And we have to change that if we want to. We get to evolve it if we want to. And everybody that comes to see me, and certainly everybody that buys this book, knowing how, they want it. You gotta want it. So that's my concepts. There you go.
It's absolutely fantastic. I got so many wonderful points from here, and it's just that whole concept of think in a different way and train yourself in all these amazing steps, Julie. You have done it so beautifully, understanding yourself, understanding why you act in certain ways. Then what you say in the first 5 concepts, that wiring, like how you were wired from birth, and then how you are hardwiring through life, and then turning it all around and rewire it, recoding it, pulling it all apart, and then just learning how to harness those thoughts and create better ones. Like you said, it works both ways. Like if you think negative thoughts, it's gonna end up in a certain result, but why don't you turn it around? You take that same thing and think a positive thought. And I had a great example of that today in a scheduling conflict I had. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to hire somebody else. I don't have the time. I don't have the talent in that just exactly what I want. And I decided to think differently. And I decided to think it will all work out. It will all fall in place. And you know what? By this afternoon, it did. Yep. It did, but I stopped myself from panicking, from bringing up all those negative emotions. So it's so brilliant what you have done with this. It's just absolutely amazing. And I love that you can go back to the index of the book and just analyze where you are at and say, oh my gosh, this is where I'm at. So this is what I need. And understanding yourself, absolutely brilliant.
Thank you so much. Yes. People that have used it are, they're pretty excited about it. And I get a lot of updates. People have a tendency to stay in touch and circle back around and say, now I'm doing this, and now I'm doing that, and now I'm traveling here, or I live here, and this is what's going on. And they like to say, you did this. And I'm like, nope, you actually did that, because I didn't do anything other than share a formula. But it was you with your motivation and your desire to live a great, big, amazing, live large, don't live little, live big, right? Because guess what? This is, as far as we know, this is our only life. This is our only life. And it's up to us to make it what we want it to be. So, so yeah, it's exciting work. I'm passionate about it. I'm always going to be passionate about it. I want everybody to of course, get the book, read the book, contact me, go to wisdomandrecovery.com, read all the different classes and webinars and workshops and support groups, and, just get involved. I mean, it's a real community that we have created of like-minded, motivated, really smart people that are sharing and guiding and supporting everybody that comes in on how to do this.
Yes, we focused a lot on the book in these 2 episodes, but the reality is if people just go and look at wisdomandrecovery.com, they can see that there's so much more to you than just the book. There is literally, if they need it, you will take their hand in that community and help them to completely transform their lives.
Yes, absolutely.
So
What I really like is the community building of it, how you're building community within your clients, with your workshops and the retreats and the other things that you do. It's so important to have accountability. So if for example, if Marina and I were taking it, and I heard Marina say, I feel so something, which is not really a feeling, it's a thought, right? And then, we can remind each other that to use the vocabulary, right?
Yeah, and the community is really loving because we go by the concept. It's not written in here, but there's a lot of little side concepts, right? Which is be a gentle observer and not a critical judge. So it's a gentle observing when feedback happens in these support groups. It's always just a gentle nudge, like, I'm sort of observing that you're seem to be in the triangle a little bit in this situation, or just a gentle nudge like, I'm thinking locus of control here that you might want to be considering. And so it's just such a loving community of people that are like-minded, and people pop in and out over the years. I mean, I might not see somebody for 8 years, and all of a sudden they sign up to come to a support group. And it's like, oh, well, interesting. What's going on for you? And usually, big life change, moving, or sometimes it's the loss. And I just want to come into a community that can speak a language, that can understand what's happening to my human organism through this loss, as opposed to saying, time heals all. I mean, I want to be with people that get it.
Yeah.
Really get it. So I invite anybody and everybody to to reach out and be involved and create the kind of life that you really want to be living, because that is possible.
And to really surround ourselves with, like you said, with like-minded people who speak the language and think the way we do as well, because it's like you said, unless we have an anchor, we can get really dragged back out into the ocean, right? And get tossed around a little. I mean, unless we are anchored, grounded, really immersed in the good, immersed in the positive, immersed in I know without a shadow of a doubt that my mind, it is flashing before me pictures of a best scenario, and it's so easy to go to worst scenario, right? It's so easy, and you can get pulled that way, right?
Right. It's very, and especially for those of us that came from a childhood where it was unpredictable, unreliable, inconsistent. That can get touched. That wound can get touched very, very easily. And by doing this, we have a tendency to create a nice it heals those wounds so that, yeah, there's that scar. Like I said, you're not going to get past, you're not going to get rid of it. It's going to be there, but it's not going to hurt. It's going to be just, I understand it. And it helped me become who I am today, and being able to really find how could that be part of my purpose? And how can I take that and use it for good? Right? Because I didn't go through all that for nothing. It's got to mean something to me, even if it makes me more loving, even if it makes me a different kind of person, a different kind of attachment figure, a different kind of parent, a different kind of contributor in the world. Even if I had to go through that to be able to give the gift that I can give today, then at least there was a reason for it. A lot of times we sit around and we just don't understand what is the reason for the hardships that we face. And being able to use this kind of approach to put things into an intelligent formulation so that everything has some meaning.
And also to like your integration, where we can hold two things in our hands at the same time. And it's like you said, yes, this was my family of origin, and this is what happened. And some of the things were not good, but there was also good. There was both. And so for whoever it is that perhaps is triggering us, they've got both as well. They've got both. And to recognize, I have not walked in their shoes. I've only walked in mine. And so until I have walked in their shoes, I can't be the judge and jury.
Who am I to judge? That keeps you on that critical judge.
There's just such a beautiful act of, in a sense, forgiveness, but coupled it with gratitude in that, if you can understand the gratitude in going through those things, because that created the character and the strength and the perseverance and the lessons. And to me, that is integration. It reminded me so much of Wayne Dyer when he, when he stood on his father's grave, and he wanted to do something else to the grave, but he ended up being so overcome with this knowledge and this wisdom in that moment. Like, if it was not for this man and the neglect of him that ended me in so much hardship in my life, if it wasn't for that, I would not be the person I am today.
That's right. That's right. The other thing about integration that I like a lot is that, and I use this in this little journaling exercise, how does my body feel emotionally and why, is that I might feel sad, and why? Because there's something missing. And I might feel fear because there's something kind of scary that could harm me financially or whatever, or physically, if I got a diagnosis or something. And I might be feeling angry because something happened that was a violation or an injustice. And I almost always can say, and I feel joy and I feel peace because, I have a lot of love in my life. I am a healthy person. I am doing a body of work that is helpful to people. I am live in a beautiful, home and a part of the world that's sunny and gorgeous, warm. So I never can not have the joy and peace. So it's the integration of all of that, right? All at the same time. I can be furious and thrilled at the same time. I can be terrified that something bad is going to happen because I've got some things going on, like, uh-oh. And at the same time, hear a song on the radio that I love and start singing all at the same time in the moment. So that's what integrated means awake, aware, available, in touch, and participating, right? So the integration is a concept I love.
Well, Julie, thank you so much. What an amazing, amazing guest you were. And I just feel so touched by the work you do. Listening quietly, making notes, learning through it again. It's just such an amazing privilege to have you here. So again, I know we have mentioned Wisdom and Recovery a few times. So wisdomandrecovery.com is the best way to get hold of Julie. Julie is on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter as well.
No, not Twitter.
Not Twitter, YouTube.
Instagram. I don't tweet. I'm not a tweeter.
Yeah, I'm not either. So I'm with you on that one. Instagram, Facebook, and Wisdom and Recovery is on YouTube, TikTok, right? So if you want to find Julie, if you want to learn more about her 20 concepts, there is absolutely no reason for you not to rewire your brain.
Absolutely.
So thank you again.
We will put a link to part 1 in our show notes as well, so that if you never did get a chance to really go in depth with part 1, that's your opportunity to do so as well. What an amazing woman you are. As Marina said, thank you so much, Julie, for joining us. It's just so enlightening, and it's just wonderful to have you here with us and to share your knowledge with our viewers and with us. I can see me using this 5-part communication formula in my classroom, right? Like,
I made a big circle all around it.
Yeah. Let's go back to the chart paper.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be asked to participate in your program and in your endeavor, and hopefully our paths cross again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Together we're creating hope. So have a wonderful time, and we will see you again.
Okay.
Everybody.
Bye-bye, you guys. Bye.